Hello, welcome back. Hope you had a nice break, and now you have perhaps a cup of coffee, a cup of tea next to you, and you are looking forward to hearing more about our next speaker, who is Jonathan Tan, co-founder of Greater Change and one of Charity Digital's very own trustees. He will be showing us which tech tools are most valuable in helping small charities achieve their mission, whether it's improving productivity, saving time, or creating compelling content. As always, please do ask all of your questions in a Q&A button. We will make sure to answer most of them in the last 5 to 10 minutes of the session. And if you want to vote for any question, please feel free to do so as well. We are very much looking forward to hearing more about Jonathan. So without further ado, let me hand over to you. Welcome, Jonathan.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And now handing over to you. I will pop back up for the questions, and good luck.
Brilliant. No, thanks very much. I just wanted to check, can everyone see my screen? I'm sharing my screen as a set of slides, a very simple set of slides, and I think it should be fine. I'm going to proceed, assuming that you can. So, hi, my name's Jonathan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Greater Change. Love to tell you a little bit more about what we do at Greater Change, and then quite quickly move on to sort of the how of the what we do, right? And I think it's really important also just to say at this stage that I'm not going to presume to know all the different varied and very individual challenges that you're facing, but really all I'm here to do today is to share our journey, how we've gone about working on our problems, and hopefully that's going to be helpful to some of you. So thank you. So Greater Change is something that I had started with my co-founder Alex in 2017. At the time, we were just volunteering at a charity called Aspire in Oxford. And I'm not sure if anyone, if you know about them, but they are a fantastic charity. I'm very lucky to still be able to call a lot of support workers their friends. And as you do when you first get into the homelessness sector, you ask some pretty naive questions, don't you? So things like, okay, the UK is the 6th wealthiest country in the world. Why does homelessness exist to the extent that it does? The fact that the headline figures nowadays, I have to update these slides because, the headline figures nowadays is that there are over 300,000 people experiencing homelessness in the UK today. And then, you ask also further questions like, why do people get stuck in temporary accommodation for years and years and years? As the name implies, it's meant to be a 6 to 12 month stepping stone, right? So as we asked these questions, the answers that we got back were pretty varied. As you can imagine, sometimes people can afford monthly rent. They can't afford the rent deposit and first month's rent up front. Maybe they've won the lottery and they've been assigned social housing, and they're going to be pretty disappointed most of the time because they're going to move in and they're going to find that the flooring has been ripped out and that there is no bed, no mattress, no washer dryer. And that's a classic example of a poverty tax, isn't it? That, if you don't have something, it actually costs you more to to live, to do basic chores. So what we really wanted to do, sort of looking at this and looking at the evidence as well, interestingly, coming out of the low to middle income country international development space, was that actually cash transfers are a really, really effective way to support people out of poverty, and the most extreme form of it, which in the UK, I think, is homelessness. So we took this idea and basically said, let's just start by helping 20 people in 2017, 2018. We're just going to crowdfund very quickly, raise some money, release it, track the evidence, track the outcomes, and see how well that works. Happily, we found that it's worked very, very well. We've supported over 750 people since. And we know that last year, over 86% of the people that we supported sustained and move on into stable housing 12 months on. So how exactly does our system work? So very simply put, we don't duplicate any of the frontline support work that is done by existing charities. Instead, what we do is we plug into their expertise and experience. So I mentioned Aspire earlier. They were our first partner charity. So what we would do is we would say to Aspire, we would brief their support work teams. And when their support workers find that someone on their client list is ready for this kind of financial support, they refer them to us through a very simple online form. And of course, that's the point of the session today, right? I'll get to that very shortly. But they refer their clients to us. That gets sent through to our ops team. We offer the financial planning support, based on the individual's aspirations and goals. And from there, we release the cash to the support worker, and they can go jointly make the purchase. As you might already start to see, there's actually quite a few steps there that if we did everything manually would be incredibly, incredibly time consuming. And very simply put, we wouldn't have the resource to run the sort of program that we run today. So what we had to do, and this is especially when coupled with the fact that, you can see around the stats that we collect, and you can probably already tell I'm a massive stats nerd. So is my co-founder, Alex. And, we very strongly believed, and it was very, very important to us that, if the support methodology didn't work, we would simply stop, shut it down, and move on, right? Or change it or edit it to make sure that it does work. So the data was very, very, very important for that. It was sort of fundamental to our theory of change. So, all of this stuff takes a lot of time and effort to do. And what was really, really crucial to our ability to deliver this, so as I said, we support over 750 people so far. We have over 60 partner charities, mostly in the southeast of England, although we're slowly trying to expand our geographical reach. And we're just a team of 4. So we're able to do that because of the fact that, I think we've been able to quite effectively use a lot of the tech tools that are available to us. I think we were quite lucky that both Alex and myself were pretty techie, if you will. So I built out a lot of our back end initially by myself. But I think very quickly that's no longer sustainable, even for someone who does code and is able to build software tools on their own, right? Because the truth is, I don't want to spend my time doing that. If you're a charity chief exec, this is going to be something that is going to take up. You're even if you had, the capability aside, it's about time, isn't it? You want to spend your time doing things that really matter, leading your team, doing the fundraising, and not really too much time, if possible at all, simplifying your tech tools. And I think over time, there was a period during COVID where things really got quite sort of, I wouldn't say bad, just very messy, because we had lots of different overlapping tech tools. No one really had any oversight of what tools we were using, how we were making sure that they could talk to each other properly. So there were data issues, right? And it just started to get really messy and expensive, to be honest, as well, because we were probably paying for duplicate services or services that just really could have been consolidated into one without really realizing how much money that was really costing us. So I wanted to do a quick poll, and Lisa, I'm assuming you can help me with this, about whether you think how much you estimate your charity spends on tech. So software, be it your email tool, Slack, or you see there, Salesforce, whatever. How much do you think your charity spends on tech every year? So you're going to see some options on a poll there. I'm going to take a second to grab some water. Yes, I think that's been published now, although I can't see the... So we're starting to see some numbers come in, quite a large variety, actually. So I'm going to keep letting that run for a while, and I'm going to keep talking for a bit. So as I mentioned, the key needs that we really had were that we needed very good CRM software. As you can imagine, with sort of 60 plus partner charities and counting, referring people in, this had to be a system that could talk to everyone, right? And that's quite difficult because, everyone has their own proprietary tool. Everyone uses something that doesn't really communicate with other charities. It's quite siloed in terms of data operations. We had needed to make sure that our daily ops could be done efficiently. It was very, very important to us that we took as little of the money as possible in covering our overheads, and that as much of it could go out to supporting people as possible. A lot of our growth came during COVID. So again, I think there are a lot of challenges with remote working. Personally, at the moment, our team in this post-COVID world, we do sort of 2 days a week in the office as sort of flexible working. I think some in-person time was very important to build rapport and trust with each other in the team. But that was very hard during COVID, as I'm sure you all found as well. And I think lastly, we had a very, very limited resources. And by resources, I meant, our budget was very small. So I can see a lot of people there, saying that they spend between 1 to 10K. I think that's the big answer. Although we have quite a few people looking at 10 to 35 and above 35 as well. So that's quite interesting. But, I would say that Greater Change falls in the 1 to 10K range. I think that's not a lot of money, is it, for tech purposes? Because that's just under $1,000 a month. So, we have very limited funding. The funding environment is getting ever tighter, as I'm sure, again, is felt by all here. So the question was, how could we try to do these things efficiently? And we're very, very glad to have been adopters of the work done by Charity Digital. So before I became a trustee at Charity Digital, we were using Charity Digital's catalog and service to help us improve our tech and ops efficiency. So I think a lot of the tools that you see there, we've thrown some logos around just as a starting point, right? But I think what was really, really important for us to do was that all of this had to be done in a fairly cheap way. And we had to try to, as over time, as you build sort of layers and layers of old tech on top of each other, I think it was very, very important that we had a way of managing this overview and to, as I say, consolidate back down. So I think we were able to, after this exercise that we undertook during COVID, after things got quite messy, I think we were able to easily reduce our tech spend by 30 to 40%, I want to say. And that was huge, right? That's a big saving. So based on the figures that we're seeing here, if you're spending 1 to 10K, that's $4,000. And as I always said to my team, I'll rather spend $4,000 on team activities. I don't have to cash it out. If we have that room in the budget, we'll much rather spend the time on training, on team building exercises, etc. That's just a much better way of spending money, right? There's 11% of people here talking about the tech spend being above 35K. I would wager pretty good money that you could probably save quite a lot on that. So that's basically a sort of very brief overview of what we've done, right? I appreciate I haven't really gone into too much in terms of the how here, but the how was really as simple as we spoke to Charity Digital, I think, and Lisa, I don't know if you can chime in here or if there's someone from the team watching this, but we had my ops manager at the time basically took on a task over the course of several weeks to basically communicate with someone from Charity Digital about all the tools we were using, doing a kind of survey around it, and then start to just do a simple bit of Googling, talking to tech experts at Charity Digital, and then sort of figuring out, okay, we're not going to use Twilio and Monday and Notion, all these like productivity tools. They're a dime a dozen, aren't they? And you're probably going to find that a lot of your team will be using different tool sets, right? And we wanted to just consolidate that quite quickly. And we were able to do that. So it really was as simple as that. And I think I'm going to stop here because what would be most helpful is probably to go directly into the Q&A. But, I think there are quite a lot of tools out there that can be used to improve our efficiency. So yeah, thanks very much for listening to my little spiel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jonathan, for this. And this is very, very insightful, and although short, it's very interesting because it's hopefully it can open up a lot of questions for many of our attendees now. Is how do the different tools that we're using every day, do we know whether we have the free version, whether it's freemium, and sometimes not everyone's got that information. Perhaps it's just one person within the team that has that information, and it's a bit hard to know whether, it happened to us, whether do we actually have the non-profit discount? Is non-profit discount actually applied? In some cases, and I would invite some of our watchers and listeners to check. In some cases, perhaps not, and there are perhaps some great savings to be made just by asking for a non-profit discount. So, it's really insightful. So, help me understand, Jonathan. We'll go into some of the questions very shortly. Obviously, we've received quite a few already, and please feel free to keep popping your question in the Q&A section. When you sort of undertook that audit, how did it happen internally? Did you bring everybody around the table and be like, okay, let's make a list of everything that we're using? How did it work?
Yeah, I think that's sort of, and apologies, I have now seen some of the questions about what are the must-have tools, and I've made a huge mistake, haven't I? I haven't talked about the tools that we do actually use, so I'll get onto that very shortly. But the reason I missed out on that was because I was very focused on wanting to get across this point that it was the really game-changing step that we took was carving out someone's time who could go around basically doing this audit and survey. Right. And that's really, really key. And I think it's also really key to understand that there are some pretty universal tools. So I'll answer one of the questions right now. So one of the anonymous users said, what platform do you use to schedule social media across all channels? The answer is Hootsuite. And you can get a discounted version of Hootsuite on Charity Digital's catalog. Right, so that's a clear and simple answer. I'm very sorry I haven't name dropped more tools, and I will continue to do so as we go through the Q&A. But the important thing for us was to say that there are a very, very small number of tools that are pretty universal, and then there are actually a lot of tools that are not so universal but could or could not be useful to you. So if you try to adopt some of these, they may end up sort of being quite counterproductive. They're clunky, difficult to use. And then what ends up happening is you try to implement it to your team, and then actually, they hate it and no one uses it. Or they bite their tongue and they go ahead and use it, but actually it's lowered their productivity. Right. So I think it's really, really important to not jump too far ahead here and start to just say, here are the 20 things that I will for sure want to implement. Rather, I think it's about carving aside that time and doing that audit of what do you already use, and what else could you bring in to replace old tools where you need to replace them, where they can be replaced with better versions of old tools, or simply, as you say, Lisa, doing a simple audit of, okay, this old tool that we're using, it works great. There's no reason to change it, but can we get it for cheaper? Right. So I think carving aside that time really was the main message I was trying to get across. And I apologize again that we haven't sort of covered more tools, but Hootsuite absolutely, I think, is one of those universal tools, isn't it? But otherwise, I saw someone else say that they used to use Monday.com and it was very expensive. Monday.com has a nonprofit the price at the
discount
moment. Well,
offering.
it's
Yeah,
not just
non-profit.
discount, it's like 10 free seats or something, I think.
True.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Monday.com now has free seats, And similarly, one of the things that we found was that some of these tech companies were introducing free seats for charities
Mm-hmm.
sort of years after we had started using them. So an example for, basic sort of editing, for report making that we use it for, newsletter crafting, a tool that we use is Canva, right? It's a sort of very easy to use tool. And Canva, when we started using it, didn't have nonprofit discount,
Mm-hmm.
but 3
Mm-hmm.
years later they did. So again, sort of it's really sort of coming back around to the point that the audit and setting aside some time is really, really worth it, because essentially it's an investment in a little bit of time from someone on your team, investing in a little bit of time with Charity Digital, and then that actually leads to pretty large cost savings. You basically break even quite quickly, right? If you imagine it's a total time investment that might cost you something like 2 to 3 grand at most. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually, you're saving, if you're the part of the group that responded, even 1 to 10K, if you're spending around the 10K mark every year on tech or above, you basically break even in a couple of months. So I think that was the main message. Yeah.
The main message, absolutely, and I know so we have a few of our members of our audience that are obviously asking about the must-have tools. So I know you mentioned a couple of them. I think I think the most important, if I can also help answer that question, is taking a step back, reviewing what you're already using. Obviously, as a charity, in most cases, you may be sending communications. You might be either sending emails to fundraisers or to your stakeholders or to perhaps your beneficiaries. So what is the tool that you're using? And it is pretty much must have to have an email marketing platform of some sort.
Yep.
So obviously, I don't know, is that something you've also reviewed, Jonathan? Is that something that
Yeah. So are we
maybe
talking
use?
about sort of communications like
Yeah,
newsletters?
exactly. Yeah, an email marketing platform where you can send out, e-blast or communications to obviously thousands of contacts.
Yeah, absolutely. So we use 2 tools on this front. So the first is that we use Salesforce,
Mhm.
and Salesforce has a Salesforce for Nonprofit app. Now, I should caveat here that I think Salesforce is not easy to develop in-house, so you probably end up having to invest some time
Somebody, yeah.
paying a developer to do it for you. But Salesforce has email automation. So that's what we use a lot. So I see a lot of questions about our CRM system. So we use Salesforce. We developed it on a pretty low budget. I think we had a budget of about 4 to 5 grand to develop it. And we then also, in addition, have a tool called MailChimp. But I think that actually this is a perfect example, actually, of why I kind of almost, I'm not a brand ambassador. I'm not being paid to refer you to particular tools, right? But it's really, really important to say that you're totally right, Lisa, that there is definitely a need for a mailing list tool. But there are like a dozen very good ones out there. Like truly, it's sort of pretty easy actually to find. And if you Google that right now, you'll see that the first 6 hits on Google are probably all paid adverts because they're all competing for your sale. And I think what's really important is, again, going back through to the Charity Digital catalog, chat to someone from CDE. There's a link on the slide now, but also there's just a live chat function usually. Chat to someone, drop a message, and then just say, hey, I'm looking for a mailing list tool. This is how we currently store our, donor data. Say it's on an old spreadsheet that we occasionally take care of. what's the best and cheapest tool? Like if you get in touch with someone from CD there and you really enunciate your needs, I think that will be a very important first step, because some tools are suitable for small charities. I
Mm-hmm.
a question there about, can you share more about free tools for small charities that have limited or a nil budget? I totally get that question, and I would be happy to give you some examples. So as I said, Monday.com has free seats nowadays for charities, right? We know that Canva has a pretty low price for essentially a multi-tool function, because you can work on slides there, you can work on reports. It's just an easy editing tool, right? So that's another example. But what's really important is to say that this audience is pretty diverse, as you can see from the polling results, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, what's really important for us to say is that there's usually not a one-size-fits-all thing. I think that Hootsuite is great value to us for posting across social media, because it saves us so much time. But if you don't have the budget for Hootsuite, then I think that just says to me that you need to use maybe a different tool that maybe doesn't have as many functionalities, but you can, but it's way cheaper, right? And they exist. A lot of these tools exist. So again, I just wanted to highlight that the key message here is not, I'm afraid I can't go around, there are 357 people here. I can't go around helping 357 charities implement their tech upgrades, but Charity Digital can, right? So do reach out. So I say that, sorry, maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah. Thank you. And yes, and then obviously we have, we have a product catalog, but we also have articles which list some free or very cheap solutions. I think it's very important. I might, it might not be a popular opinion, but when you look at the free version of anything, you also need to understand why is exactly free. If you grow, so for instance, perhaps a free version of a CRM or a platform which uses a lot of data, for instance, if you grow, which I'm hoping all of our attendees are their organization is going to grow eventually. If you grow, what will be the cost of that tool eventually? Because if it's free now, and that's perfect. If you're a starting charity or a very small charity, yes, there are loads of free CRMs, or the free tools that we will make sure to list, or we'll put the links to the article that list them. It's very important to make the most of these. But then how much does it cost you in the long run? And I think that's also very important as an organization, perhaps as a leadership team, to take a step back and to really ask the question to these tools, to these solution providers, like, okay, your product is free, but how long will it remain free? And then when it is becoming a something you have to pay for, how much will it be? And I think sometimes this is where it's really important to take your time. There's no, like you said, Jonathan, there's no one size fits all, and there's obviously sometimes some tools that allow you to grow alongside them, and some of them that are not adapted, and that's fine, because obviously if we all knew which products could scale up, we'll get onto them, but some of them are very adapted to specific stages. So we'd say that from an organization perspective, the big category that, like, the must-have tools that you need to consider, obviously we talked about email marketing. I think we also probably need to talk about something, a tool, some antivirus or something that will help your organization keep protected. Now, I don't know what you're using, Jonathan, specifically, but I think with whatever solution you're using, whether that's Avast, Norton, Bitdefender, Kaspersky, etc., there's also some offers out there, and it's a category of tool that charities should have, because organizations are very vulnerable. We're working with the National Cybersecurity Center, which provides lots of guidance for small charities on how to protect themselves. So I think this is also an area where charities need to spend a little bit of time understanding what's out there. And then, obviously you mentioned CRMs. There's plenty of free CRM, open source CRM out there. That's also quite important. And then I guess, I don't know if I saw another question. I know we almost close to the time, but I thought something was very interesting, which was sometimes the technology we are using is right, but it's the lack of expertise in a team and the lack of time to learn how to make the best use of them that's hindering the process. And perhaps, Jonathan, as being part of a charity, what tips would you have, or maybe you've lived that?
I wanted to quickly touch on, because I think I see a lot of chatter about CRM and Hootsuite. There's
Yes.
75% discount on Hootsuite on Charity Digital's catalog. I think the reason I say that is not to say that you must use it. As I said, Hootsuite's not paying me anything, so I'm not I'm not here on behalf of Hootsuite, right? But I would reiterate Lisa's point and to challenge quite strongly. I see Joe Robertson in the chat as well. I think you're totally right. It's about value for money, isn't it? Because sometimes if you try to save, 50, 100 pounds here, and then you end up actually costing you more time in your staff's, workload, then that's not really a good trade, right? So I think it's really, really important to say that, and I think we tend to do this. I'm not sure why, but I think in the charity sector we see it a lot where we forget to value people's time.
Yes.
And I think it's very, very important to reiterate and use it. Now, CRM at a completely free level, simple as using like Google Sheets on G Suite, right? And you can get G Suite discounts, and that's actually what Greater Change used to do. I built our CRM on G Suite. Because when you think about what that basically means, what do you need in a CRM? Well, you need a way for people to refer in, that's Google Forms. You need a way to store the data, that's Google Sheets, right? You need to make sure it's secure, but Google Sheets is fairly secure. It's end-to-end encrypted. And as long as you manage the share settings correctly, it's quite secure. But it's not very good at protecting data integrity. So it's very easy for someone to lean on their keyboard, or a dog to lay his paw on the keyboard, right, on your mouse, and that sort of deletes a whole bunch of data. And that's why eventually we made the investment and moved to Salesforce. And essentially that is an evaluation of saying, what is the cost of not moving to a more to a system with greater data integrity, right? And the cost was, well, we've avoided trouble so far. But if we, went any further and we kept gambling, we were worried that, that loss of data might lead to something pretty severe. So again, that's why, I think the antivirus stuff, very, very good point. So yes.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. But I don't know, Jonathan, are you staying for the rest of the day? Will you be available perhaps?
I'll be around, but my email is pretty easy to find. I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn as well. Just a message there. But I would seriously just say, guys, if you take one thing away, it's not any tool that I've mentioned, because as I said, they all have competitor tools out there. There are hundreds of them. So the point really wasn't that, here are three that you should definitely, there are three you should definitely use. Okay, but like, most of the stuff that we're talking about, you need to set aside a week, not very long. Get in touch with someone on CD at Charity Digital, and then figure out an appropriate set from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's how we can help. Obviously, we have the catalog. It might not be anything you're looking for, but at least it's worth checking out. And obviously, we have also our virtual booth that you can check out. So we'd be very happy to help. And there's no obligation. Well, that's the most important. There's absolutely no obligation. But we know that there's great discounts out there, and it's our role as a charity to make sure that all charities know about them and then act, just decide, make informed decisions. So yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, well, thank you very much, Jonathan, for your time. I'm very sorry
that's
we
cool.
run a little bit over, but it's
That's
been
right.
very insightful. I saw loads of great recommendation in the chat. So thank you very much to all of you for putting your tips and the tools you're using as well. That's really interesting. As I said, Jonathan is very happy to probably receive some LinkedIn requests. So you're probably going to receive quite a few, I guess, after this session. But yeah, it's been really great having you. Thank you very much for sharing your experience, working with us, but also, growing as a charity. It's been great having you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Brilliant. And our upcoming, obviously, you're very welcome to vote for this session, rating with the little stars. We hope that you found it insightful and enjoyed the tips. We will be back at 11:30 on how to engage supporters with WhatsApp. And that's going to be in partnership with mobile messaging and donation expert Simba. As always, you're very welcome to obviously rest your eyes, take a break now, and check out our partners section and our attendee section to continue networking. Thank you very much all, and see you at 11:30.